Berlin, 1904. A crowd packs into a courtyard to watch a horse do arithmetic. Someone calls out a problem the horse has never heard before. What is 9 minus 4? And the horse, a stallion named Hans, taps his hoof. Once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. Then he stops. He can reportedly add, subtract, tell time, even spell out answers letter by letter. For 2 years, nobody, reporters, professors, a government commission sent specifically to expose him, manages to catch him cheating. Not once. So here's the question this video actually answers. It isn't was the horse a fraud, it's if he wasn't cheating, what was really happening in that courtyard? Welcome to the Odd Hypothesis, the strangest questions, and the real science behind them. Clever Hans became a worldwide sensation, a genuine scientific mystery, and, as you're about to see, the accidental birthplace of a research method science still leans on today. The man behind Hans was Wilhelm von Osten, a retired Prussian schoolteacher obsessed with one question. How far could an animal's intelligence go if you taught it the way you teach a child? Starting around 1900, he drilled Hans for years, using treats as rewards, building slowly from simple counting up to arithmetic and the calendar. By 1904, Hans could reportedly tap out the answer to problems he'd never heard before. And von Osten never charged a single visitor. He wasn't running a paid act. He seemed to sincerely believe, with a proud teacher's total conviction, that he taught a horse to think in numbers. That sincerity matters because it means whatever was happening in that courtyard, von Osten wasn't in on it. So in September 1904, the Prussian Board of Education did something almost nobody expected. It convened a formal commission, 13 people, including a philosopher, a circus director, a veterinarian, and a zoo director, to catch von Osten in the act. They removed him from the room entirely. They asked their own questions in their own order, with von Osten nowhere in sight. Hans kept answering correctly. The commission searched for a hidden signal, a code, a device. They found nothing. Their official conclusion was almost an anticlimax. No evidence of deliberate fraud. Which meant, as far as 1904 science could tell, whatever Hans was doing, he was doing it for real. But no fraud is not the same as genuine arithmetic, and one commission member, the philosopher Carl Stumpf, knew it. So he handed the real test to a young assistant, Oskar Pfungst, a psychologist willing to take the horse apart the only honest way, one variable at a time. Pfungst compared what happened when different people asked the questions. When the questions were written instead of spoken, when Hans could see the questioner and when he couldn't. It was slow, unglamorous work. No big reveal yet, just careful measurement, one small change at a time. And that patience is exactly what would crack the case. First, Pfungst put blinkers on Hans, so the horse couldn't see the person asking the question. And his accuracy collapsed, from over 90% correct down to barely better than a random guess. That's the turn. A horse who could supposedly do arithmetic suddenly couldn't do arithmetic the moment he couldn't see a human face. So the numbers were never the point. Watching the questioner was the point. Pfungst pushed one step further. He tested what happened when the person asking the question didn't know the answer either. That's when the case really broke open. Pfungst arranged questions where nobody present, not even the person asking, knew the right number in advance. Under those conditions, Hans's tapping collapsed almost completely. He wasn't reading the question, he was reading the questioner. And if the questioner didn't know the answer, there was nothing left to read. That result is strange enough that it stopped me cold the first time I read Pfungst's report. And if it's doing the same to you, that's exactly the moment to drop a like before we go further. Because what Pfungst found next is even stranger than the trick itself. Hans wasn't broken. He was doing something almost more impressive than arithmetic. He had just never been doing arithmetic at all. So what was Hans actually reading? Pfungst tested it on himself. He'd ask a question he already knew the answer to and try to stand as still as humanly possible. And Hans still found him. Pfungst eventually traced it to something almost nobody could consciously control. A tiny downward tilt of the head, a barely there release in the eyebrows, a small shift of the shoulders made the instant the correct tap count was reached. Every questioner made these movements without meaning to, without knowing they were doing it. Even Pfungst, hunting for the exact cue, could not fully stop himself from making it. Here is what that means. Hans had learned, through months of training, that a tiny human flinch signaled, "Stop now, you have it." He wasn't counting to 4. He was watching a body tighten with anticipation as the tap count climbed, then relax the instant it was correct, and he was stopping on that release. It is honestly a staggering perceptual feat. Reading a signal so small its own sender couldn't feel themselves sending it. Hans hadn't learned mathematics, he had learned people. Once Pfungst blocked that signal, there was nothing left to read, and the arithmetic vanished with it. And here's the part almost every retelling of this story skips. Von Osten wasn't lying, and he wasn't running a con. He was making the exact same unconscious signal every questioner made, he simply never knew it. The trick had no trickster. It was an honest mistake, made by a man's own nervous system, that one animal happened to be brilliant at detecting. To prove it, Pfungst had to build something science barely had a name for yet. Hide the answer from the questioner, separate the person asking from the person judging, and test whether the result held up when nobody in the room knew the truth in advance. That structure, testing blind so your own expectations can't leak into the result, is close to the exact logic behind what we'd now call a double-blind experiment. Psychologists still call the underlying bias the clever Hans effect, and this is where it gets genuinely strange because Hans's exact mistake never stayed in 1904. In 2019, researchers testing a modern computer vision model found one that could spot horses in photographs with startling accuracy until they checked what it was actually keying on. It wasn't the horse. It had latched onto a small watermark that happened to appear on many of the horse pictures in its training data. Researchers now call this failure the clever Hans effect by name. A model that scores brilliantly by exploiting an unintended shortcut in the data, instead of learning the thing it was supposed to learn. If you want the rest of these science catches itself stories, subscribing is how you won't miss the next one. Clever Hans never did a single sum in his life, but the horse who couldn't count still exposed a flaw in how humans test anything. A flaw so persistent that, more than a century later, it's still showing up inside our smartest machines. Maybe that's the real odd hypothesis. The most useful thing a wrong answer can do is force you to build a better question. This has been the Odd Hypothesis.